Okay, so here's a quick view of the ingredients and items that you'll need for this recipe. Starting from the left, we have pure vanilla extract. Now make sure that this says pure vanilla extract, not artificial or imitation. That stuff tastes terrible. Next to that, we've got a cup of sugar. Right above that, we've got an unknown amount of water. We'll get into that in a bit. We've got about a quarter of a cup of butter cut into cubes, a half a cup of heavy cream, some ground cinnamon, and just a couple of tools. We've got a pot, a saucepan up above, and a silicone basting brush. This can be any kind of basting brush, but I prefer silicone. Okay, so jumping right in, we've got our heat on high just to get our pot warmed up a little bit. We're going to add our cup of sugar. Now we're going to try to get this right in the middle of the pot without getting it too close to the edges. We're going to take our water and we're going to attempt, anyways, to pour this around the edge and make sure that none of the crystals of sugar get on the side of the pot. Now this is very important that you don't have any sugar crystals on the side of the pot, because if you have any sugar crystals, they could cause your caramel sauce to crystallize, and that's not a good thing. So this is where the basting brush comes into play. So what you're going to do is, if you see some sugar on the side of your pan, just get it a little bit wet and use this to kind of rinse off those crystals of sugar. So now you're going to hear a lot of snapping and crackling in the sides of the pot. That's because you'll notice the flame here is curling up the side of the pot. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually turn down the flame so that it's just underneath the pot, not curling up the sides. And this is going to help prevent the recrystallization of the sauce. So now my intention was originally to have this in real time, so you can watch the whole process from start to finish, but that's going to take a long time. I don't think you're going to want to sit here for 20 minutes or so just to watch this, so we're going to be jumping ahead here and there. Starting now. Okay, so here we are a few minutes later. You'll notice that we're almost at the boil. An interesting thing occurs. You'll notice that it'll start to boil around the edges, and it'll actually take quite a while for it to boil in the center. Now that's because with the sugar, it's going to increase the boiling point of the water to the point where it's going to take a lot longer to boil. Now I mentioned earlier that I would talk about the amount of water and why it was an unknown amount. So basically what you want is enough water to get the sugar wet, but you don't want to have too much water that it's going to take longer to boil away. And that's exactly what we're doing here, is we're trying to boil away all of the water. Now why add the water in the first place, you might ask? Well, that's to help the sugar dissolve, of course. This is a whole process that is involved in candy making. Yes, this is the same process that candy makers use to make anything from lollipops to taffy. The texture of your candy will change depending on the sugar and water levels that are present. Now, if I were making something like a lollipop or a hard candy or taffy or something along those lines, I would take a small amount of the sugar mixture out of the pot at regular intervals and test it in cold water to see the texture of the final product. Now, we're not actually making candy, so we're going to skip all of that and just let it go. One thing I think is very important to note is do not stir this. In fact, don't even touch the pot. The more you touch this, the more chances there are of crystals forming in your sugar, which will just cause a spontaneous recrystallization of the entire thing. This sounds bad, and, well, it is. What'll happen is if you get a piece of sugar crystal falling into your pot, or it's knocked or disturbed enough that it'll recrystallize, your entire pot will turn back into sugar crystals. And basically at this point you'll have to start right over from the beginning. Alright, getting close to the end here. You'll notice that the bubbles are starting to stack up, and And it'll almost look like somebody's blowing bubbles with the sugar water. They'll start off small and then get very large. We're getting close to the end. Be patient. Now, one of the great things about making your own sauces like this is you get to customize how it turns out. Every decision you make throughout the creation of the sauce has a direct effect on the end result. Such as, what kind of seasonings you use. Do you use vanilla, or do you use orange zest, or whatever it happens to be that you like to put in it. Also, how long you cook it has an effect. Now, when I get to the end, you'll notice that I let the sauce get quite dark. Now, I did this on purpose so you can see the range of colors from light to dark that you can expect to see in your caramel, and allow you to make a decision on how dark you want to go. Keeping in mind that the darker you go, the more bitter your sauce is going to be. So if you want a very sweet sauce, you want to keep it on the light side, but if you like it to be dark and bitter, then go ahead and let it get dark. It's all up to your own personal taste. So now we're starting to see a little bit of color along the edge there. It's now safe, yes, I said safe, to pick up the pot and give it a swirl. Don't stir it. You don't want to stick anything in there that's going to cause it to recrystallize, but if you give it just a gentle swirl, then you can kind of stir that brown into the sauce. Also, you're going to kind of smell a little bit of a familiar aroma of cotton candy in the air. And you may even see a little bit of smoke coming off the pot. There's a reason for this. We're burning the sugar. No, seriously, we're burning the sugar. That's what we want to do. Don't get afraid, just burn that sugar. Once your sugar is as dark as you'd like it to be, turn off the heat, grab your bowl of cream, and dump the whole thing in. Do this quickly. It's going to create a lot of steam, and you want to get your hand away from there as quickly as possible. Once the boiling has subsided a little bit, grab your favorite stirring utensil. I like my silicone spatula here, and give it a stir. It is now safe to stir. Completely safe. Don't worry. Now that the boiling has subsided, it's time to stir in our butter. Just grab a few cubes at a time and stir them in. Don't take too long, and don't stop stirring. You don't want it to get greasy. You want to make sure you incorporate it nicely into the sauce. It's going to seem kind of liquidy at the moment, but that's because it's really hot. Oh, and I would suggest not touching it with your finger or your mouth yet. Let it cool. As it cools, it will thicken up and it'll turn into a nice, beautiful sauce. The only remaining step now is to add our seasonings. I'm using vanilla and cinnamon. I find this makes a good combination for a lot of different uses, but feel free to put in whatever you like. And that's it. Our beautiful caramel sauce is done. All we have to do is let it cool, put it into a container and refrigerate it. Now this will stay good on the shelf for quite a while because it's mostly sugar with just a little bit of other stuff in it. But I would suggest to refrigerate it. If it's a little too thick for your taste, heat it back up in a pot and add some more cream to it. That'll thin it out nicely. I'd just like to take a moment to thank you for watching this video. If you like what you saw here, hit the subscribe button and also the like button, and make sure you tell your friends about me. And hey, if you got any thoughts on things you can use this caramel sauce for, why don't you post it in the comments below. Again, thank you for watching this video, and remember, keep cooking with fire.